Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight I want to welcome Richard Henderson to the show. We are going to take a look at the first three Kinks albums, the Kinks, Kinda Kinks, and the Kink Controversy. So without any further ado, let's get this one started. Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and I want to welcome Richard Henderson here tonight. This is an episode Richard actually had the idea for this, so I want to give him some props. But what we're going to look at tonight is we're going to do a series on the Kinks. And tonight we're looking at the first three albums. So we're kind of looking at that garage rock era, that the whole start of the British invasion. So we're looking at the Kinks. Well, I'm going to show you, Richard, do you have like the first album up? I'm going to have you show props. There you go. So we're going to look at the first Kinks album. We're going to look at excellent. Yes. Here's the US one. Because they were on reprise back in the day, but this is the Rhino CD.
Well, this album was a Pie album. They were signed to Pie for all the 60s.
Yeah, they were signed to reprise here. And we're going to look at Kinda Kinks.
And Kinda Kinks is right here as well.
Right.
This is an Australian copy under the Astor label, which is a lot of really well-known 60s albums were released on the Astor label in Australia. It sounds pretty good too.
And Kink Controversy.
Yep, and this is
hey, and look at this. This is actually the first. Now this one's on. Well, back in the day, this is like 1987, but this is on. PRT.
Yeah, which is the new name for Pie. They changed.
Yeah. So this is old. This is back in the day when this is the first issue when it came out on CD.
Yeah, the Kinks albums have been reissued
many times.
Yeah.
I think this sounds fine. It doesn't sound.
Yeah, I've had a few Kinks releases over the years, and they've all sounded pretty good. But the PRT ones sound pretty good. And these are the mono. I think actually the Kinks debut album is a mono. It was only ever released in mono, I think.
Well, this is a stereo mix.
Oh, okay.
They mixed it over here.
This edition, which you have to have if you're going to get into this stuff at some stage, they do both a stereo and a mono version. Yeah. The first one's a stereo on the first disc, and I listened to it on headphones the other day, and the separation is like it's panned left and right, hardcore.
And I don't know what the reason was, because Tommy did this. Why is this in stereo and then the rest of them are in mono?
I don't know.
I don't know why that.
I mean, the Who's first album was probably
stereo,
mono. I think.
No,
was it mono? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over here in the States, it was issued on Decca, and they did a mono reprocessed version of it.
Okay. Is mono reprocessing when they take the mono and they try to make it stereo? Is that what it is?
I thought that this originally, I can't remember. Man, if we only had a way to look this stuff up.
Yeah, I know. Like this is the thing about all of these bands from that era, because of the changes in technology that were happening in the mid to late 60s. There's all these different editions that came later, and you don't know what you're getting. Are you getting the mono repressing stereo? You have to look on the covers and
And like a lot of these US records, like you might have 3 albums that came out in the UK.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the US, we're gonna, like the Beatles catalog and the Rolling Stones, we're gonna stretch it out.
Did you grow up with all the capital? Oh, sorry.
So no, they had put out Kink Size, and they put out Kinkdom, but then Rhino took them and compiled them onto one CD.
Yeah. Well, all those Kinks EPs, the Quiet Kinks and that one, they're all rare collector's items now.
Yeah.
And they were all on bonus tracks and all the reissues anyway.
But anyway, I got Richard here tonight. We're going to take a look. Let's start out with that first album. Here in the States, it was called, they retitled it You Really Got Me, but everywhere else it was just the Kinks. And I can't remember. I think the first album pretty much had the same lineup on.
There is a crucial difference, I think.
What is that?
The Kinks' very first single was a cover of Little Richard's Long Tall Sally, which came out, I think probably 1964 to 63.
February 64.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. And, it's a spirited cover, not exactly groundbreaking, or it doesn't distinguish it from any other British beat group at that time. But the B-side is fabulous. It's a Ray Davies original called I Took My Baby Home, which is on the UK regular edition. And it's total like proto power pop, 3-chord, catchy, in your head. I can imagine, a band like back in the late 70s, the Romantics. They were like totally British Invasion influenced, and they did a cover of the Kinks on their first album. And I could imagine a band like that doing a cover of it. It's just a great little, start to Ray Davies' songwriting career. But the next single that they brought out after that was a double-side Ray compositions, You Still Want Me and You Do Something to Me, which are both...
They're on here.
Oh, they're on there. Oh, let me
it's got 3 bonus tracks. It's got
they're the bonus tracks. Yeah.
You Still Want Me, You Do Something to Me. And like you said, Rich, how many reissues of this has there been out since 1988?
Just go to Discogs and you're just streaming down one after another. The Kinks are one of the most they used to reissue Kinks like vomit back in the day. The amount of compilation albums you see out there, it's crazy. I mean, go to record markets and it's like I see a new different one I've never seen before every time I go to the record market. Of course I have to buy it, but
Now, I Took My Baby Home is just a regular track on here. It was part of the original.
Oh, really? Record. I'm looking at Wikipedia now, and let me have a look. Took My Baby. It's a regular track on the red cover, but I don't see it on the. They don't say it. It just must be a bonus one on that one you got.
Well.
They don't have.
Their whole catalog in the early days is just all kind of.
Yeah,
I'm looking.
It's a lot less complex, I think, maybe than the Beatles' Capitol albums in comparison to the British ones. Would you say?
Yeah.
I mean, did you grow up as a kid with the Capitol albums or the British ones?
The Capitol records.
Yeah, I think they're really different, aren't they?
Yeah, but they're still, you can mix up the Beatles and it still is great. I still like all those Capitol releases. I don't have a problem with them at all. Yeah. But Long Tall Shorty. Okay, so on here you've got Long Tall Shorty, and
that's on the original.
Yeah. For the most part, just looking at the track listing.
Well, they don't have Revenge, which is a very short instrumental that's probably doesn't really need to be there.
Yeah.
That's just a bit of a throwaway.
But I mean, man, this record's got "Stop Your Sobbing" on it, which the Pretenders did a conversion of. I mean,
it's a wonderful song, I think.
It's just funny because you have a lot of Ray Davies songs. A lot of the Ray songs are absolutely brilliant, but then you have a lot of covers. I mean, even though, "Stop Your Sobbing," you can see the brilliance.
Yeah.
Already
it's one of those
place.
Already he knows how to just like write a melody and a phrase that gets to you straight away. Like the third song on the album, I Just Can't Go to Sleep. Can't Go to Sleep. That's another really good early one he did, which is very, very Mercy beat, but it's got a middle 8. I mean, it's like not too many songs had middle 8s back then, unless they were Lennon and McCartney songs. And that's a really good song. And the first track, after they released that single which flopped, You Still Want Me and You Do Something to Me, which are total Mercy beats type songs, but I love them. That's another good example of how good he was. Yeah. But obviously it wasn't until they did You Really Got Me, which was an absolute game changer of a rock song back then.
And, no one had anybody keeping track of it, they totally changed music,
Well, I mean,
once that came out, you can never look back.
Dave Davies never gets enough credit. I mean, he changed rock and roll with what he did with that riff. I mean, how many times have you heard that riff in rock? I mean, it's the prototype for punk rock, garage rock, heavy rock, maybe heavy metal, alternative. I mean, that song is just timeless. Well, I used to go. Sorry.
No, I was going to say this is 64. What year did Link? What year did Link Ray do?
Wasn't that a 50s song?
I'm gonna look it up. Yeah, was Rumble in the 50s?
I think it was 50s.
I mean, that even predates this. Rumble was March of 1958.
Oh, there you go. But still, it's different from Rumble, really.
It's different from Rumble.
It's much more guts in it, like It's far more heavy and distorted, but the fact of the matter is, even if it wasn't, it's still a great song.
Oh my
I
God,
mean,
yeah.
the chord progression is wonderful. The way it just keeps. I mean, I'm a guitar player, and it just goes up and up like that. And very few rock songs do it in that way. It was totally unique, and it was recorded. It was actually they actually did a recording of it earlier with Shell Tell Me, and they didn't like it. It was too gentle. You know, it wasn't. It didn't have the guts. And the record label said, "No, we're not going to pay for you to do it again." So I think it was their manager who got the money together for them to go into a studio and do it the version that we all know and love today. And if that didn't happen, who knows what would have happened with the Kinks' career if they didn't have a manager that supported them like that. But that record is. I used to go to a rock club in Sydney when I was living there called Frankie's Pizza. They've recently just been closed down after being there for like 20 years or something. They're going to make way for um, an inner city train or something. They're tearing it down. And they used to play just classic hard rock all night long. And they play You Really Got Me next to all the stuff that's happened since. And it still sounds great. It still kicks ass next to all the stuff that's come later on. It's just a great rock and roll song with lots of attitude and, and it's recorded. Even the guitar solo, it's a bit scrappy, but it still sounds great, Like, whoa, no, I mean, it rocks, Oh shit, you've gone silent.
Oh, shoot. Well, think about this though, Rich. I don't know. I wasn't alive when this came out, but I can only
No,
imagine it was probably like the aliens dropped down and dropped this track on the people
yeah, yeah,
because to listen to it, even though now you listen to it and you go, well,
yeah. It
it's like when
definitely
you
sounds like
first
a
heard Van
60s song.
Halen. Well, I remember
Yeah,
when I was a kid and Van Halen came out, it was like, what the hell is this?
yeah. Well, that's the first time I heard the Kinks' name when I heard about Van
Oh, is
Halen
that right?
covering. Yeah, that was like when I was 11 or 12 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But even Jimi Hendrix thought it was a groundbreaking song. He told Dave Davies they were on a plane together once, and I think that was a total landmark record.
Mm-hmm.
And I know
Yeah.
that John Bonham, Led Zeppelin, went up to Dave Davies or told Dave once, said that we just do You Really Got Me night after night in a heavier way. I mean, it really is such an influential song. It changed so much,
Mm-hmm.
and it's basically the birth, I think, of definitely the birth, I think, of garage rock for sure. Can you think of how many garage rock bands it influenced? I mean, if you go that famous Nuggets compilation and all those kind of bands that were just rudimentary two chord, snotty teenage bands singing about young love. I mean, You Really Got Me is a prototype,
It is
I
a
think.
prototype. Oh,
And
100% agree. I've
so
got
influential.
both. No, I've got both of those Nugget box sets, the first two.
I've got them all. There's like
Oh,
about 5 or 6 of them.
yeah. I didn't get the one. I found them used. I didn't buy them new or anything.
Oh
So,
yeah,
in my travels, if I find them used,
yeah.
I,
Snap them
I
up, way,
pick
because
them up.
they're all great.
Oh, I know.
All the different editions. But anyway, the funny
Eventually
thing
I'll
about
find it.
yeah, the funny thing about You Really Got Me is no one seems to have ever heard the original version. I think they've kept it under lock
Maybe
and
they
key.
wiped it. Maybe I don't
Oh,
know.
maybe they
Maybe it
did,
doesn't
but
exist.
they did do a song though earlier on called "Don't Ever Let Me Go," which was like an early demo they did, which has exactly the same riff, even the guitar solo. It's kind of like more trebly and not distorted. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that was the original version. I'm not sure, but it's quite
Well,
similar in
it
feel
could
and
be.
style. So I know. Check that out. It's a demo called "Don't Ever Let Me Go,"
And what's
and
that? Is that on one of those CDs that you've got?
it's probably a bonus track on. It's definitely a bonus track on this one. This one's got
I feel
everything you'd
kind of
want.
I feel kind of I've got all these old versions of
Mhm.
the CDs. I just feel kind of inadequate.
Yeah,
That's
but
why
they're
I have
cool
to
to
go to
have
you,
all
Rick.
those old versions.
Yeah.
It's always good to have all those old
Oh,
CDs.
I know. Yeah. I don't
You
see
don't always
anything
have
on
to have
here.
more. Sometimes less is more. You hear what you're meant to hear. I mean, you have to trawl through something like this
Hmm.
only if you're like a diehard fan like me. But this is the edition to get of the first album. Believe me, it's got everything that all the B sides, all the stuff they released at the time, all the radio sessions, and the mono and
The
stereo versions.
BBC stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's where that interview came. I was telling you about.
Yeah. I'm gonna see if I can find it. I can probably find it somewhere. Everything's somewhere, Rich. It's all out
Hmm.
there.
And I should tell you, Your Last Name is the title of my favorite Kinks album.
Well, it's by design. No, I don't know.
And you
See,
know what?
You're not the only one. There was somebody else I was on some show. I can't remember what it was, but they mentioned that Arthur's their favorite Kinks album.
Yeah, I think it's.
I think a
personally,
lot
I
of
think it's
people
their
like that
best.
record.
Yeah, it's criminal that record didn't have the success it deserved at the time. But we'll talk about that on another podcast.
But this first record, I mean, there's a lot of filler on it, but
yeah, it's pure fun from start to finish.
Fun.
When you crank it up and just play it, it's like a party record. It's just a bunch of. I mean, Dave Davies was 17, I think, when they recorded that album. Ray was 19. I mean, they were just kids,
They're just
and
kids.
It's just totally got that attitude. I mean, from the very first song, "Beautiful Delilah," it's like it's punk. I mean, Dave Davies is this snotty, snarling kid going, "Beautiful Delilah." I mean, it's punk right out of the gate.
Do you know how?
Sorry.
No, you're all right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in comparison to the Beatles and the Who, the Kinks were relatively rudimentary, but that is really what makes them punk, because they were very basic and very raw, and they had a type of raw energy that, I mean, the Beatles obviously were very well produced. They might have been more like the Kinks if they had captured what they did in the Liverpool when they were live. They were totally like, raw energy. But when they got in the studio, it was far more produced and far more arranged. And with the Who had a dynamic. They were really aggressive, but they were really all virtuoso musicians. I mean, Keith Moon's drumming. I mean, the drumming on the first Kinks album was actually done by a guy called Bobby Graham. It wasn't their regular drummer, Mick Avery. I don't think he was actually officially in the band.
Oh.
And but it's still, in comparison to Keith Moon's drumming, quite straightforward. Even though he's a great drummer, Bobby Graham. I think Shell Talmy used him because he thought he was the best in Britain at the time. But in comparison, I think the Kinks were definitely, to me, the most punk of all those three bands. Just in attitude, in their musical rudimentary style. I could imagine them being on stage, and they were very rowdy on stage. They used to fight, and
heck, they're still fighting.
Yeah.
How did Shell come into contact with the band? How did he end up producing?
Well, I've actually watched an interview he did recently, Shell Talmy, with there's a channel on YouTube called Produce Like a Pro, which is one of my favorite channels. He did an interview with Warren recently, and he said that he was someone just recommended go see the Kinks or hear one of their acetates or demos, and he heard it and he liked it. He just decided to work with them.
There we go. But think about it. I don't think the Kinks had that, because they recorded for Pi. They didn't have much money. It wasn't like the Beatles where they were EMI act and they were able to, and recorded Abbey Road and all that,
But Shell Talmy recorded the Who as well, as we all know. Yeah.
I mean, they have similar tonality, Well, he's got a certain stamp. I'm just going to leave it.
Well, I suppose it was the recording studio that he was using, I guess, at the time. I don't know. I forgot which one it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Regent Sound or something like that. I can't remember. But the thing is, the Who were heavily influenced early on by the Kinks. Pete Townsend has admitted that the riff to I Can't Explain was basically influenced by the riff rock of You Really Got Me. And Pete Townsend's an absolute. He loves Ray Davies. He really respects him as a writer.
Oh, I've seen interviews with him, and he just praised him.
Yeah.
He liked all this.
But this album, I didn't get much into it when I first got into the Kinks as a teenager, because actually I'll show you the album that got me into the Kinks. Was actually in 1987 they reissued all of the Pi albums under the PRT label, and all the 60s albums. Yeah, they also released some compilations as well.
That's when all these came out too.
Yeah.
At that same time.
I got this, which is a compilation of all the non-album singles and B-sides. And this, as an album, I used to just listen to over and over. I mean, the amount of great songs that Ray Davies just churned out at this time. I mean, they're all pop songs, but they're all great. Stuff like It's All Right, I Got That Feeling, Who'll Be the Next in Line. This is when he was writing stuff like See My Friends, which is generally regarded as the first Indian-influenced song. Um, the B-sides and stuff you came up with, phenomenal. And this is just addictive. This album, it's just you just put it on.
Man,
It's just
that must be a 2-record set.
it is. It's a double, and it's yeah. At that time, this was when they were reissuing. Like it's got a little picture of those 2 EPs there,
Oh
and
yeah, yep.
and I'll just show you the inner sleeve because they reissued at the time a lot of other famous Pie albums like Pachulia Clark, The Searchers.
Donovan.
They
Is that
got
Donovan? Yeah.
episode 6. That band that Roger Glover and Ian Gillan were in before they formed Deep Purple. David Bowie's stuff, Shell Tummy produced. And this early Status Quo as well. This was the album basically that clinched my love for the Kinks, just listening to this compilation over and over. And then I got the first Kinks' first album, and I was a tad disappointed with it because, like you say, it's got quite a bit of filler on it. But I appreciate it much more these days, just as an album that influenced so many people.
Right. But you have to admit that all these bands from this era, they had a lot of filler. It wasn't
it was all about singles back then.
Right. The Beatles pretty much dictated everything. Yeah. And the Beatles kept up in the game.
Yeah.
Well,
they had to, didn't they? I mean, they were in a position
they just did what they did. I don't think the Beatles had to do anything. They were cranking out so much, and they were so creative and absolutely brilliant. The combination of, George, Ringo, John and Paul is just so overwhelming that
I do think there's a little bit of filler on some of the early Beatles stuff too. Like, I don't know, Hold Me Tight or stuff.
I don't hear any.
They could have come up with that in 5 minutes. Oh, okay.
I don't. Me personally, I don't see how the Beatles could do wrong.
I can skip over a couple of Beatles tracks like I can do on this as well. But
sure.
In general, I think this album was pretty much what you'd expect from a British invasion band back then. They do all the sort of standard issue stuff like Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley. They do it quite well too. There's a song on here. What is it? Too Much Monkey Business, Chuck Berry cover. Yep. That's really fun, really upbeat.
Yeah, it's all good.
And got the final track on here, Got Love If You Want It, is a really good jamming number that they probably did live quite a few times. And Ray really knows how to wail away on the harmonica as well. But they were unlike sort of like the Stones and the Who, in that Ray Davies was, he was nowhere near as kind of gravel voiced and sort of macho as Roger Daltrey was, or he didn't have that kind of like I don't know, vain kind of like arrogance that Mick Jagger had. He was more foppish and very English.
My God! Oh God, yes, yeah.
I mean, they even look very British on the cover. I mean, that could,
Oh yeah, definitely. You can definitely tell. Well, it's kind of like, they put them on the front. It's kind of like, I'm not saying it's like Meet the Beatles or it's like With the Beatles, but
if you're a Kinks diehard too, the Kinks diehard, like I'm on a Facebook group, they always go on and they say, why has Pete Quaife got his hand the other way around than the other members? I don't know. It's supposed to be some kind of myth behind that, but I don't know.
Oh, it's like Paul is dead.
You can you can get all nerdy about this stuff.
Why is Paul walk across the street in Abbey Road barefoot? I don't know.
Yeah. And what's that little message on the car?
28 IF. He would have been 28 if he would have lived. People have a lot of time in their hands.
They just dream too much.
But I think this is worth having. I'm not exactly sure if this is the record I would start someone out on, but it's historic,
I'd get a compilation, really.
Probably, yeah. Rhino put out a comp. What can I say? There's a bazillion.
Well, actually, I've got the first compilation that they released. Is on the Australian label. This one.
I've got one of those.
Yeah, it's just 10 tracks, but they're all great, obviously. And that's the back cover.
What label is that on?
This is the Australian Astor label again.
Okay.
But I would assume that in Britain it was the Pie label and Reprise in America. But I think that was the first official.
Reprise had
is it Reprise?
It's Reprise, but they had a greatest hits, but it had a different cover and all that. But I think it was probably basically the same thing.
Okay.
But even in the 60s though, Rich, they were putting out comps you
Mhm.
know, they were just doing whatever in different countries. So God knows it was already
Yeah.
starting to become a
It must
mess
have been
up.
frustrating to be an artist back then. The lack of creative control you had if a record company had the power to just release what they
Mhm.
felt like. Especially if you were like, out on tour or something, and suddenly you find out this single's released in this country and this single's released in that country. I'm
Mhm.
sure that happened to the Kinks quite a few times and other bands. It's like, why did you do that? You didn't even tell me about it.
But like you say, Rich, this is a fun listen.
It is. It's
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 not.
basically
It's just nice pop music. It's
it's
not
the sound of
anything
youth, 1964.
exactly.
Mm.
I mean, if you like any of that stuff, highly recommend this one. I mean, it's
Yeah.
fine. I don't know if I'd start out there. I probably.
No, I wouldn't either.
I'm looking at kind of Kinks, and
Kind of Kinks is definitely an improvement in
yeah,
songwriting. And also the fact that Ray Davies wrote 10 out of the 12 songs. This is way before the Rolling Stones were writing most of their stuff. So he obviously had the stakes as a songwriter. He had enough respect to get his
don't
songs on the
don't
album.
forget about this. Beatles in 1964 when they did A Hard Day's Night, they wrote the whole thing themselves.
Mm.
So I think that's when you could
Wasn't that
probably
65? Was
not
that
hard
64?
Hard
Oh,
Day's Night 64. But they were
okay.
that whole record, there's no covers on it. So, all
Yeah,
these
no,
other
that's
bands are looking at it going,
that's my favorite early Beatles album.
yeah,
It's great.
they're setting the stage. They're setting a
Mm.
precedent.
Yeah.
But but it's a good point because you look at this record. Um, well, actually, this as an example, it says tracks 4 through 15 were released as Pi LP kind of Kinks.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this is padded with singles.
Yeah.
All these they're all on these.
Yeah.
The
Well, you got
singles.
the US version's got
Right.
everybody's gonna be happy,
Yeah.
which is really great single. And that's not on the regular version of it. But of course, it's got Tired of Waiting. Actually, I'm looking at the
No, I think
Wikipedia
everybody's
page.
gonna be happy's on here.
Yeah, you haven't got. You've also got Set Me Free on there, which is another great
Yeah.
single that they did. But
Everybody's
that's not
gonna be
on.
happy's was on one of the EPs.
Yeah, I don't know why they kept Dancing in the Street though on it, because to me, in my opinion, that's probably the worst thing the Kinks ever did in their early days. It's a total throwaway cover.
Definite filler. But this record, I would recommend this for somebody getting involved
Yeah,
because
no,
because of
it's definitely the first. It's when Ray Davies'
yeah,
songwriting has progressed a lot.
it does. I
I
mean,
actually think this is the version to have because it doesn't have all the singles on it. I think you should leave the singles as the singles, and
mhm.
this can be appreciated as an album, apart from that cover of the Dancing in the Street, which is, I mean, the one thing Ray Davies doesn't like about Kind of Kinks, he said that it was too rushed, and while it is, he said the double tracking of his vocals is appalling, and that on that track in particular, his double tracking of vocals is terrible.
Mm,
You know, but the funny thing is, I kind of like the fact that it's not too um, too worked up because it does still have that kind of rough, spontaneous energy
it
that
does.
they had. And I'm sure when they were live, they were really wild. And this is also the time when they were touring this album that they got banned in the US. So I think they were, um, they were probably a really great live act to see at that time. And it's a terrible shame that they got banned because
Yeah.
they could have definitely become one of the greatest live acts back then. They could have killed it live.
And that's what really hurt their career is that, you had everybody else coming over here and
Mm.
cleaning up, Rolling Stones, Beatles,
Well,
everybody, and
it kind of
Kinks are
confirms though.
banned.
They kind of confirms their punk credibility. In fact, they were so apparently wild and unruly that they got banned. I
Mhm.
mean, isn't that punk?
It's
Still,
punk,
it killed their momentum. But if they didn't get banned, we wouldn't have got all those great albums later on. You know.
maybe. I would have liked to seen how things would have played out had they weren't banned though.
Yeah, I think they definitely would have become one of the big bands and live as a live band. Because if you look at footage of there's very little footage actually of them back at that time. But the stuff that I think there's a concert that they did in France or Sweden or something. It's on YouTube, and it's
Mhm.
just wild. I mean, the girls are just and they're just really hard edged band, and they're just really rocking it up, and the whole room is just totally getting into it. And if they had been able to stay in America and do more touring, they definitely would have just been huge, in my opinion, with Ray Davies' songwriting talent, Dave Davies, fierce guitar playing, and Pete Quaife is also a really great bass player. If you listen to some of the early Kinks on headphones, especially like the stereo mixes and the remixes they do, you can really hear Pete Quaife's bass line. He was great. I mean, that bass, he does the bass line, You Really Got Me, and it's really sort of heavy and really strong. Mick Avery, not particularly an outstanding drummer, but again, he was rudimentary and he was, basic. That's the reason why I consider them like the first punk band. They were just very raw and in the moment. Anyway.
Well, I think that's a good point about Peter Quaife, because he doesn't get any notoriety for his playing at all.
No, but he deserves it.
He does deserve it.
If you think he's played on all these classic Kinks albums, and I don't think there was ever a story about Ray or Dave saying, "Pete, play like this," because Dave was notoriously in conflict with Mick Avery a lot. There was that famous incident where he insulted Mick Avery on stage, and Mick Avery picked up his his hi-hat stand, and whacked him over the head. He thought he killed him. He ran off.
Yeah, I don't think they ever really talked after that either. I mean, they were still in the band, but
to this day, they still can't stand each other.
No, they can't stand.
Isn't it terrible? You can be an old man and still carry that kind of.
You know what's amazing is that Mick could have stayed in that band that long. Because when did he finally get out?
Almost I think he got out around
80,
somewhere around the late 80s. In the 80s for sure.
That's amazing. He
stayed. He was loyal. He was a loyal guy.
But you would think that, I don't know. I just think if they didn't get along, that would cause a lot of issues.
I'm sure that Dave could be a very intense person. I mean, I've seen interviews with him. I think he's a very inward-looking, intense kind of guy who likes things done his way. And I mean, he's been fighting with Ray since the very beginning, which isn't surprising because they come from a family of 8 kids. The first 6 were girls. Then there was Ray, and then there was Dave. So when Dave came along, Ray probably felt, "Oh, who are you to come along and steal the spotlight from me?"
Right.
And Dave had a lot of attitude, and I think that's where the conflict lies. But Dave, he probably thought, he's out the front and he wants everything to be great, and he doesn't like Mick Avery's drumming. And just, he's only a teenager at that time, so he's full of attitude. He's probably taking drugs and alcohol. And look how long his hair is. He's got to have the longest hair of anyone back then.
Well,
I think he had the longest hair of anyone. I can't think of anyone who had hair as long as he did back in the early 70s. I don't even the Stones had hair that long.
This is early 65. No, I don't think so. The Pretty Things might have.
Yeah, that's true. The lead singer, what's his name?
Phil May.
Yeah, he had a pretty long hair.
Yeah, that guy had long hair.
Yeah, they were pretty
maybe
funky,
they predate. I don't know. Maybe.
But I think they were after the Kinks, though, weren't they? Did they come after the Kinks?
I don't think so. I think they were all about the same time.
Okay. So I wanted to say, who did covers of the early Kinks? There was obviously we know about Stop Your Sobbing. There was obviously You Really Got Me, Van Halen did. And also Ray Davies did a duet album back in, I don't know, the 2010s or something. And it had he did one with Metallica, You Really Got Me. On there.
I'm looking at a picture.
It's called See My Friends, that album.
Pretty Things started up in like 63 because they're like
really?
Contemporary the Stones.
What was their first song called? Was it Don't Bring Me Down or something like that?
I don't know, but there's a picture from 1965 and they've all got long hair, way longer hair than anybody.
Right. Okay, so maybe I'll be corrected about that, but he still had pretty long hair.
I think the Pretty Things probably were the ones that really...
Yeah, they had a reputation of being really wild.
So their first single...
was it Don't Bring Me Down?
Man, there's a lot of information here.
No, you don't have to worry about it.
No, we're good. Here we go. First, they put out a lot of live albums.
Their catalog's a bit scattered.
Well, just like a lot of these British bands, they put out a lot of EPs. The first record they put out was May of '64, Rosalind and Big Boss
Oh,
Man.
Rosalind. Bowie
Mhm.
covered that on his Pin-Ups album. I like that. That's the first song on it. He
Don't
also
bring me
covered "Don't Bring Me Down" on the Pin-Ups album as well.
Don't Bring Me Down was the second single.
Of
But
course,
anyway,
Bowie covered a Kinks song on that too. "Where Have All the Good Times Gone,"
yeah,
which is actually on the third one.
yeah. But by this, I think in this early period, though, when you look at like King Controversy, don't even though there's still some filler on here, but don't
Mm.
they, for the most part, don't you think the critics really think that this record's where things really started taking off?
Yeah, I think it's the one where they were starting to break with the just the real early bluesy R&B sound and
Hmm.
get more to melody. And Ray Davies too was starting to. I mean, actually, on kind of Kinks, there are songs on here where he's getting more introspective, like
Yeah.
um, "Nothing in the World Can Stop Me Worrying About That Girl." Uh, what is it? Something better beginnings. Actually, one of my favorite songs on this, one of the best rockers they ever did early on. "Come On Now," you know that song,
Yeah.
and Big Star used to do that live. Um, so that's how good it is. Even Big Star wanted to do it.
It's
But
amazing if you think about how many people did covers of Ray's stuff from
mm.
these early records, though, you know?
Well, like I said, they spawned like 1,000 garage rock bands. So there were probably kids all over America doing "You Really Got Me" and "All Day and All of the Night" and
Mhm.
like "I Need You." They're just such great songs to pick up a guitar
Yeah.
for a kid to pick up a guitar. Like My Generation, all those songs, they would have rocked out and grown up with all that stuff. And the
So if we
Kinks were also one of the sorry, but the
No,
Kinks
you're
were
right.
also one of those bands that when the punk generation came along and they were like dissing all the dinosaurs, the sort of like crapping on bands like Queen and prog rock and all that. The Kinks are one of the few bands that they never put down. Like they didn't put down the Who, they didn't put down the Small Faces, and they didn't put down the Kinks. And obviously there were bands like the Stranglers did "All Day and All of the Night." The
Mhm.
Jam did David Watts. So I mean, the punk generation definitely grew up on loving, all that
Oh,
Kink stuff.
yeah.
But they
Oh
knew
my
that they were
gosh.
like an early punk band. But
Mhm.
of course, when we get to Kink's Controversy, this is the first one that's really consistent all the way through. And it's only got one cover, which is "Milk Cow Blues," an old blues number, Sleepy
Sleepy
John
John,
Estes.
yeah, Estes.
Yeah, I haven't heard the original, but
Why do
it's
you
great.
think why do you think they led the record off with that? It just seems
Maybe they were
odd.
just still saying we still got some of that old energy before we get into the other stuff. Or maybe they'd already recorded it, who knows? Or maybe they just wanted to have fun in the studio and rock out,
Yeah.
who
You
knows?
have
But
to
I mean, the song after that, "Ring the Bells," is very gentle.
Yeah.
So
But
I
they're
kind of
all
like
Dave
album.
songs. Well, they're
Yeah,
all Ray songs except I Am Free. That's a
yeah. The
Dave
first
song.
one, Dave wrote, which is a great song. I really like it.
I usually like Dave's stuff.
Mm.
I
But
think
you like that song?
I love it.
Mm. I think it's very much a statement too about who he is. Rebellious, freedom-loving guy. Lots of attitude. And I think he was probably still a teenager, probably 19 or 20 when this album came out. And of course, that band, that alternative band, Sleater Kinney, did a parody of this cover. Sleater Kinney,
Yeah, yeah.
their "Dig
What
Me
is it?
Out" album.
Dig Me Out. Yeah.
Yeah. But when I go through the songs in here, "Milk Cow Blues," it's a great cover. I like it. I like all those trebly guitars. Um, "Ring the Bells," nice song. "Got to Get the First Plate Home." That's pretty good. Pretty good rocker. "When I See That Girl of Mine" was covered by Bobby Rydell. You heard his version?
No, I have not.
"I Am Free." "Till the End of the Day." That's another song the Big Star did. That's one of the Kinks' greatest early songs, in
I
my
think
opinion.
so. Of course, Van Halen did a version of that.
I think they do that, or they did "Where Have All the Good Times Gone."
Oh, they
They
did.
did that.
Yeah, I keep getting those songs
Yeah,
mixed up.
it's because they're both sort of minor chord songs or
Yeah,
something.
they're
But
very similar songs.
yeah, yeah.
But what's the
But
deal with this record? Because Mick Avery only plays on two tracks of this
I
record.
think he had an injury or something at the time. I can't remember.
Clem Kaladi. I'm not familiar with. Probably a
I don't
stupid
know. I haven't
question.
done enough research into it, but yeah, I think I don't know. Mick Avery was.
He was in the
Uh,
Tornadoes, and he was
oh,
a
okay.
session musician, so they brought
All
him
right.
in. But
Yeah, but I really love the Big Star version of "Till the End of the Day." Have you heard it?
isn't it on? It's
It's a,
on Sisters or Big Star 3, right?
yeah, on the Ryko disc version,
Yeah.
the one that's got extra tracks on it. And what is it? The world keeps going round. Another the thing about on this album, Ray Davies is starting to get really introspective. Some of his songs also verge. Like I mean, Ray Davies was known for being a bit troubled, a bit introverted, and which is probably one of the reasons that he never got along with Dave, because Dave was a bit more happy-go-lucky,
Mhm.
sort of like extrovert type. But on this, some of the songs are almost depressive. You know, I think when he was a kid, actually, his parents actually took him to an analyst or something because he exhibited more than unusual kind of introverted, troubled behavior when he was a kid. And I think on this album, you can in songs like "World Keeps Going Round," "I'm on an Island," "Where Have All the Good Times Gone," "What's in Store for Me." He's being very introspective in a way that a lot of rockers back weren't there. I mean, John Lennon, of course, used to write songs like "Help," and he kind of was starting to be more inward looking and whatever. Like, but I think Ray was definitely one of the first to really start going inward in his songwriting.
Mhm.
I'm on an Island. It's an interesting track. It's got like a calypso style to it.
Yeah, I love that track.
Yeah. Where Have All the Good Times Gone? Obviously, Bowie covered that. That's a great song. Van Halen did it. It's Too Late. It's basically filler. What's in Store for Me is another Ray Davies inward looking song. You Can't Win's just a straightforward song. No, but this is the first album that I think you could just play all the way through without really wanting to skip any of the tracks. I
I
mean,
agree.
Kinda Kinks would probably be like that too if it didn't have Dancing in the Street on it.
Well, I mean, they were one of those bands that just kept improving as they went along. They were
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like, I don't think the Kinks ever really put out a bad record,
yeah.
but they were on such a creative, I don't
Well, to
know.
me, the singles and the B sides were often better than the album tracks. I mean,
What do you
this,
think
as I
at this
said,
time?
this one is the
Yeah.
album to get if you want to hear that. It's just from beginning to end. It's just the amount of great songs he came up with.
So would you consider them pretty much as a singles band at this time? I mean, you really couldn't take these records so
Yeah, no, they
seriously,
weren't
but
really an album band till Face to Face,
which
which
I
is the
think is
album after.
leaps and bounds
Face to
where
Face is a masterpiece. It's
it's a
like
masterpiece.
every single song is above average or great.
Because you think about it, they jump from this to face. It's like holy
Absolutely,
mackerel.
it's a massive leap. And also, by then they were also getting more of a grasp of the recording studio,
Mm.
and they had people like Nicky Hopkins working with them full time. I mean, he plays on I think Kink Controversy,
Yeah, he
but
does.
Nicky Hopkins was a major contributor after that, and Ray Davies' songwriting was just getting far more interesting, and he was starting to write about characters and British society. He wasn't just writing hey girl, you know where we going tonight, and all that kind of stuff. It was stuff. Also around that time too is when he was writing stuff like Well Respected Man, which is on the Quiet Kinks EP. You got the Kink size one. Is that just
Yeah.
the 4 songs from that EP?
Uh, there's well,
Is there 8 songs or 4 on it? Because maybe they reissued the two
well,
EPs
out of the
together.
whole thing, there's 17 tracks.
Oh, really? Well, it's probably got the Quiet Kinks EP numbers on it,
Um,
which is where Well Respected Man turned up, which was a real groundbreaking song at the time for the Kinks because no one expected him to come up with something like that. It was a character song and a very, very smart character song about British class and, you know, it's like a folk
look,
song almost. It's hardly a rock song, like a folk.
let me look this up real quick. Um, well, actually, in the states, see, like we were talking about, Rich. You know how in the U.S. they would repackage stuff. Kink
Mm,
size, which is here,
yeah.
was the second considered the second album here.
All right.
And it consisted of songs that were left out of the U.S. presses of the Kinks album. So they did the same thing with the Kinks that they did with the Beatles. So everything that was on an EP.
So is that an actual album that came out like on an LP?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll show you. Wait a minute. Let me
download this. I'm still learning about all this early Kink stuff. I mean,
it's hard to. Well, here's the original cover here's Kink Controversy when it was on Reprise.
Cover. Yeah.
Which is great. I love these American.
I love that cover.
I love the jackets. I love the whole look of it.
Yeah.
Here is. I thought I downloaded it. Where is it? Crap. Hold on.
All right.
Let me pop it up here.
Make sure I show you something else after you do that.
Here's Kink size. It basically. Oh wait a minute! I've got to upload it. It basically looks like.
Oh right, I remember that.
It looks like this, but it's just a different variation.
Yeah. I remember seeing that now.
Yeah.
I thought that must have been like a compilation, but it's.
Well, it is. It's just the EPs.
Oh well, there you go. Yeah.
So what we've got here, we got the Kinks, kind of Kinks. Well, it goes Kinks. You really got me. Kink size, kind of Kinks, and Kinkdom. Let me download Kinkdom. So they were really cranking out these records, here in the States.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a shame why they ended up getting banned because they were really hot at the time. The record companies were really putting stuff out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, you've probably seen this. I love this album cover. Oh, come on, Grant. If I could only click faster, Rich.
I've got enough patience for today.
I'd be all over it. But here it comes.
What kind of technician?
Here's Kinkdom.
Oh yeah.
But I love all these album covers. They're just very stylized.
Yeah, you Americans are lucky. You get all these great alternative album covers that we never get down here. But I think generic stuff most of the time.
So they put this out, and then after that, everything is. They do Controversy, which is it follows. It's basically, I think, our version and the UK version is the same.
Okay.
So,
you mean of face to face, or that's what I've noticed. I don't see many variations of the face to face album cover. I don't think I've seen any, actually.
Then everything's back on track. Everything's the same from then on.
And that kind of shows you what a break it was between the touring years and the American years, and when they were stuck in Britain.
Right.
But
before Face to Face, they did put out a greatest hits.
Yeah, was that the is that a different one from the one I showed you?
Yeah.
Okay. But I actually forgot to show you the first copy of Kind of Kinks I had as a kid was this. I think it's a Canadian version. And it's like, not a very really distinctive cover. But the funny thing is that's a Village Green Preservation Society from the same photo session. Mm-hmm. If you look at the front cover of the Village Green Preservation Society, it's the same. And but that photo now is actually the official photo of their Twitter and YouTube channel. But actually, did I tell you that this discussion, the timing of this discussion is great because it's just the 60th anniversary of their first show the other day. Their first show was Valentine's Day, 1963, as the Kinks. Before then, they were called a few names. They were called the Bow Weevils, the Conrads, and most famously the Ravens. But their first show as the Kinks was Valentine's Day, 1963.
That's incredible.
So this is good timing.
So let's say someone's watching this, and God knows, I don't know if we're going to turn anybody onto this.
I'm going to share this on my Facebook groups, of course.
All right.
That I'm on.
I mean, you've got these UK records or the Australian pressings. Like I said, in America, we had a whole bunch of records. But would you say if someone just getting into the greatest hits from this era would be plenty, or? you think these are must-have records. I know everything from Face to Face on, I would say you have to
It's
have.
kind of difficult because, as we said, there's a bit of filler and it's also scattered. I mean, what do you do? If I was, oh God, it's really difficult. If I was Australian,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, you're not Australian, but I would recommend this compilation, which came out in the early 70s, which is a combination of everything in the 60s. It kicks off with You Really Got Me, and it's
Mm-hmm.
got a few selected tracks from the other early albums as well. It's a double set. Um, oh,
You know,
well, what's the greatest hits that you got?
and these are all in mono, but it's this.
Oh, that's the one.
Okay, and this
That's
is
the
the
one.
Rhino one, the Rhino
That's got
issue.
the Rhino have a knack of really compiling the
Mm-hmm.
right stuff, and that
So this has got You Really Got Me, All Day and All the
yeah,
Night, Set Me
it's got all the
Free,
relevant ones from that time.
all the relevant. Who'll be the next in line?
Yep,
Holy
yep,
crap.
yeah,
Stop Your Sobbing, everything. All dedicated follower of fashion.
yep. That's it. That's the one.
All the singles up
I've
until
seen that one around
66.
online, but I've never bought it just because I got so much other stuff.
Well, you don't need it. You've got
No.
all the remasters and all this.
However, once you go with that album, then I would say if anyone can find this, this would be the next step up because it's got all the B-sides, so many of the great early singles. It's got like the first two singles, like, so you can dig a bit deeper with this album. And also at the same time that the PRT label released this in 1987, they also released a hit singles compilation as well, which has got all the hit singles. So
I've seen that. I've seen that cover.
Yeah, this
I've
is
never
another
heard
one
that
I'd go with as well. But the one you got, I'd go with because it's more concise and it just sticks to all the early garage rock stuff.
And I don't know. I'll tell you, Rich, if I go through the bins and I'm looking for used stuff, I hardly ever see any early Kinks CDs or records here in the States.
Really?
I'm sure probably if I go somewhere else, there might be plenty of them. But here where I'm in Ohio, I'm like in central Ohio.
Yeah.
You
Well,
never
maybe
see this. You
yeah,
never
yeah,
see
yeah.
this.
Did you get that at a shop or did you get it online?
No, I bought those online.
Oh, right.
I got them like Discogs or maybe eBay. I don't
Well,
remember.
look, let me show you. I mean, like I go to the record markets and I found this one not long ago, which is a compilation of the face to face to through to what is it, like the early 70s era, and it's all mixed up all over the place. It's a 2 disc set. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound very good, but it's a real out of the box kind of compilation. It does have some rare kind of tracks that were on like soundtracks, like they did a soundtrack called Percy for the film Percy, and it's got like one of Ray's greatest ever songs on it called God's Children, which is a beautiful song. It's got stuff like another song called The Way Love Used to Be, stuff like that.
Well, it looks like to me, show me the back cover of that because it just looks like it's jam packed.
It is. It's just all over the place.
Oh,
I mean,
it's no way it could possibly sound any good because
yeah,
it just is.
it's really thin and trebly. I've only played it once. I was really disappointed. I got it when I went to because my little ritual every month, I go to the record fair in a suburb in Brisbane. It's a regular one where I got friends that work there, and I try not to buy too much these days, but I always look forward to my ritual as I buy out 4 or 5 records and I go home and I have my glass of bubbly or whatever, and I put this on all excited. I'm going to play it, and it was just sounded like crap. However,
you're all excited. You thought maybe it'd be incredible, and
I was a real Pointer Sister, and I just deflated.
There, now you're talking. King Chronicles, the CD version of that on Reprise.
Oh, you saw it. You saw it. This is
that is one of the comps
absolute
that
definitive. This is Reprise one.
Yeah, but that's one of the best sounding CDs if you want Kink stuff.
Really? They reissued this and remastered it not long ago on red vinyl, and it went like that. I didn't even get a chance to buy a copy, and they're all selling for an arm and a leg now on eBay.
But that's one to have.
It is brilliant. The only problem is it's got a silly 1950s pastiche on it that the bass player sings that they stick in there called Will Seed Green or something. Or Will, I forgot. I don't know why they put it on there. It just kills the flow. That's the only one kink you might say on this. I was going to show you this interesting one. It's called the Great Lost Kinks album.
Yeah,
it's got like
that's one of those critically acclaimed ones that I don't
yeah.
think it ever came out on CD or anything, but
No, I mean you can get all the tracks now, bonus tracks and everything.
right.
But it's a reprise album.
But when it came out, though, people were raving about it.
Yeah, especially if you're a Kinks fan that wanted all the rarities. You got pretty much all of the real late '60s rarities here. It's got some nice. It's got the nice Davy song on it. This man he weeps tonight, and I'm not like everybody else, which is another like early punk song, full of attitude. You know that song?
Yeah, I've never seen one of those in real life. I know about it, but I've never seen one.
I indulge from Discogs. No, actually eBay.
Yeah,
it's some weird artwork though. The artwork's just
you wouldn't think that they would use something like that, but whatever.
It's got a early '70s picture of Ray on the cover, like he's the main dude, and it's got "Till Death Do Us Part," which is part of a soundtrack or a soap opera. I'm not sure. Misty Water and Mr. Songbird were both intended for the Village Green album.
Oh, okay.
They're like bonus tracks now on all the reissues of the Village Green album. Plastic Man, that singer. Have you ever heard that song?
I've heard Plastic Man. Yeah.
One of the few 60 singles that's got the word bum in it. It's so funny. Only a British band would say the word bum in a pop song.
And Ray could get away with it.
Well, they didn't actually. Unfortunately, it got banned.
Did it get banned by the BBC or something?
Yeah. I was going to show you this too, which is an interesting tribute album. One of the better tribute albums I've heard.
Yeah, I've never heard that either.
No, it's mainly alternative artists.
Okay.
Everybody from Matthew Sweet does a Village Green cover, Big Sky. It's got Queens of the Stone Age on it. Jonathan Richman, Fountains of Wayne. They do the first cover is theirs. They do a cover of Better Things. I recommend this. It's pretty good.
Cool.
Got liner notes from Ray himself on it. And these are the two deluxe versions, of course, of the other albums we've been talking about today. So if ever you get a chance to get these 2011 Sanctuary Universal releases are the ones to have.
Okay.
Got everything you would want, all the relevant singles and B-sides and radio sessions from these three albums. Everything you'd want's on these.
Everything's on there.
Good liner notes. And they sound great too.
Are those still in print, do you know?
No, they're not.
They're out of print.
But I don't think they're that expensive. But there's so many Kinks compilation albums floating around now with bonus tracks that people probably don't think it's much of a stretch to see these and think it's much different from the other ones. But these are the ones to have. And all the other ones they followed them up with too. Face to Face, Village Green, something else. I've got those as well. I love those days when the record stores still had heaps of stock, and you'd go in and you'd see all these albums on the shelf.
Yeah,
and you'd buy them up. It's not like that anymore now.
When I went down to visit Todd Evans down in Atlanta, we went to one store, and they had all kinds of stuff. It reminded me of the old days.
Yeah, well, we used to have a really great store here called JB Hi-Fi. We still got it, but around the time when everybody was downloading, they used to have everything. You'd go in there and the store would just be packed full of everything you'd want. Everything from the most mainstream to the most alternative, all the movies, everything it was like a wonderland for a nerd who wanted to shop and buy everything. And around the time of, I don't know, maybe 2010-ish or whatever, when people started downloading and stuff, they sort of, the store about halved its stock, and these days it's hardly got anything. It's all about computers now and stuff like that. But it used to be my dream place to go and shop when I moved to Sydney, especially when I was buying up. And what else? Do I have anything else to show you? I think that's pretty much it.
That's it.
So I think we pretty much had a good little.
I think we've went an hour. We've had a good chat.
Yeah, I like these two Kinks mags I've got two. I've been reading up on.
You were hardcore, Rich. I'll give you that.
Oh, you know, well, the Kinks are my favorite '60s band.
Oh, okay, cool.
I love them more than the Beatles.
Yeah, I can't go to that extent.
Well, I grew up hearing the Beatles all the time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Everybody used to play their albums. The Kinks were like my personal discovery. You know, I discovered them for myself, and I got into albums that hardly anyone knew. Mm-hmm. So I was going through all these amazing albums, all those late '60s ones, and I thought, these are just amazing songs. Ray Davies is a genius. I like bands that sort of like have like a cult, you know.
Yeah.
And when you get them, and when other people get them and are into them, you can nerd out on them in a way. Everybody knows about the Beatles. Everybody knows about the Who, Led Zeppelin.
Right.
You know, maybe the Small Faces are a bit like that too. You know,
I don't know how the Kinks are perceived here in the States now. I don't know. I mean,
well,
I really don't know. I don't know if they're forgotten.
Well, all the artists on this tribute album are American, so obviously they've got a real cult, especially with alternative and indie artists that really appreciate great. I mean, in many ways, the Kinks were like an early alternative band because they were going against the grain. You know, they were doing things that, you know, I mean, even the sound of their albums too are relatively underproduced in comparison.
Right.
To,
they didn't have any money for them.
No, and that's what makes a lot of them great too. Just the quality of the songwriting and everything that goes.
Well, it gives you that. Well, you mentioned this is almost like the beginning of garage rock. Think about it. Great songs, the lo-fi production. I mean, I don't think they've really got. Well, God, I hate to say that because the stereo mix of the first Kinks album really does sound pretty good.
Yeah, I really like it, and it's funny too. You know, on some albums when they pan stuff really left and right, and in the middle of a song, the panning will go from left to right while they and that happens actually on I think one or two tracks on this, the first album. If you
it makes me want to listen to it with headphones again.
Oh, do it. It's really fun. You know, it's a much more of a clearer, clean mix too, which is interesting to listen to. It's interesting when they remix all these old '60s albums. They're so clean. That's like it's almost like you're in the studio. You're standing there.
Well, there wasn't much going on then. You know, it was pretty pure.
Yeah, it was.
You know, of course, you know they mastered them, and you know, like the Beatles, they really put a lot of compression on them. You know,
did you like
cymbals were all distorted and everything?
I assume you bought the Beatles box sets when they came out, the mono and the stereo ones.
You mean the vinyl?
No, when they reissued the Beatles in mono and stereo.
I got the CDs,
in the box sets, the white and the black. The mono one was the
white I've got that.
Yeah, I mean the difference is remarkable in the mono mixes. I mean, some people prefer the mono mixes because they're more sort of punching in your face, but I don't know. It depends what mood you're in.
It does. Well, Rich, let's wrap this one up.
Yeah, that was nice.
It was a great discussion. Hopefully, we've turned on some people to some early Kinks.
I hope so. I think the Kinks just don't get enough credit for what they pioneered in the early '60s. I think they were really important. They really were.
And I think those first three records are great. But I think I think you could probably just get the comp and just get the 45s.
Well, that Rhino one you showed me, that's the one to start with.
That's probably the one to start with. And then, you know, get Face to Face and then, you know, something else and just keep going.
Well, I definitely get the first three albums if you like the comp.
Right.
Then you'll have everything you want. But as I said, if you can get your hands on this one, it's just amazing. All the B-sides and stuff that he wrote. It's got like, you know, beautiful. It's got like you know that song Days.
Yeah.
I think it's got Days. It's got She's Got Everything with the Romantics covered on their first album. It's got Autumn Almanac, Mr. Pleasant, Dedicated Follower of Fashion, Well Respected Man, Who'll Be the Next in Line, Man He Weeps Tonight, Mindless Child of Motherhood. The only thing it doesn't have, which I thought it should have, because it wasn't an album track, was a great Dave Davies song called Susanna's Still Alive. But maybe that was considered a solo track. I'm not sure.
Oh, I think that was.
Probably actually I'm wrong. Yeah, it's a solo track.
All right, cool.
Okay. Well, we'll see you till when we put in our shoes next week.
That's right. We've got shoes. So stay tuned for that. And that's going to be with Stephen Schnee's going to join us on that one.
Yeah, and I was wondering because I thought I knew he was a fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering why you didn't do it with him, but it'll be fun to do it, the three of us.
Oh, yeah, we're going to do it.
He probably knows far more than I do.
Well, he's like an encyclopedia on power pop, so it's going to be fun.
He's an encyclopedia on so much.
Yeah, he is. It's going to be great. All right. Richard, I want to thank you for coming on. Okay. Please leave a comment whether you like the Kinks, you don't like the Kinks, you like these comps, you don't like these compilations. Just please leave a like, subscribe, you know, the whole routine. And I want to thank Richard Henderson for coming on tonight, and we had a great discussion.
God save the Kinks.
That's right. God save the Kinks. Well, Richard, you have a good one, and I will see you. Well,
see you next time.
Shoes. All right. Yeah, have a good night.
Bye-bye.